over the years, and I've been involved in politics one way or the other since 1974, I always figured that the message should be the issue, and everybody would rally around the message, and that you didn't have to have any of the special interests or any of the money. But the truth is that money really is important, and it does help. It helps us to get on TV and do the things that we have to do. But obviously, I give credit to the message. I know I get a lot of credit, and hopefully I help to a large degree, but really it's people like you who join with the enthusiasm and the beliefs and the conviction that we can solve our problems, and the problems aren't that difficult, and we can solve them merely by obeying the law and reading the Constitution. There is no doubt in my mind that the message of freedom brings people together. I am astounded by that, and the crowds that we're getting, there is great and grand diversity. And that's the way it should be, because freedom is not threatening. Because if you really believe in freedom, you don't want to intimidate your friends and neighbors by writing laws, pretending that you can legislate virtue. It doesn't work, and therefore people don't feel intimidated. The same way when it comes to economic issues. It's recognized in a free society that it's your money, and you get to spend it, and nobody should be telling you how to spend your own money. Great empires, countries that have stretched themselves too far, and for financial and economic reasons. We did not have to fight the Soviet Union. They collapsed for economic reasons. Most other nations have collapsed for economic reasons, and not because of invading forces, even if you go back all the way to Roman times. So if we want to prevent that collapse and chaos that would come from it, we have to start cutting spending. If it were you or I, we know we would have to cut to live within our means. Governments are different because they have the taxing authority and they have this printing authority. But we'll have to cut, and there's one place where we can cut. I believe the majority of the American people can accept this and agree on this. We don't need to go after the poor that we have taught to be dependent on the programs. Even technically they shouldn't exist. We shouldn't go after those programs. There's a lot of people who are dependent on medical care and retirement benefits, and we don't have to. But where are we going to cut? And how much do we have to cut? I don't think we have to just cut $100 billion. I think we have to cut $200, $300, $400, $500 billion. And we're spending $1 trillion to maintain our empire overseas. We have to end the empire and come home. When we have this national control of our lives, and this idea that they have to pass every rule and regulation on how we perform our personal behavior, as well as control our money, what does it do? It sends a message out. The only way you can get control back is you have to be a high-powered lobbyist to go to Washington and work for your special interests. And when the economy goes down, and when there's less production and the government has less, then everybody is clawing at each other and fighting over it. And that's what welfare and socialism does. Freedom does the opposite. It allows us to be non-confrontational, bring people together, and if we defend liberty and understand liberty, we realize that the purpose of liberty is to strive personally for excellence and virtue. That is not a responsibility of government. Believe that if I don't have government to take care of me, then I won't have a job, I won't have any wealth, I won't have medical care, I won't get an education, and everything is dependent on the government. So if you have a depression come along, such as we had in the 30s, instead of blaming the government that was at fault, what they'll do is they'll say, aha, the only way you can do this is turn all the responsibility over to the government. And the same way after 9/11. It was a great opportunity, and some of the neoconservatives admitted it. This is an opportunity for us to promote our views, because people are fearful. And when people are fearful, not only do they give up their economic freedoms, but too often they'll give up their personal liberties. But there's one conclusion I've come to about all the things that have been passed and all the bad legislation that has been passed by 9/11, is that there is absolutely no reason ever to give up any personal liberty to be safe. You want to be safe, the more freedom you have, the safer you'll be. We do not need the government taking care of it. I'm also convinced that if we had had a better understanding about personal property rights and responsibility and the Second Amendment, 9/11 probably would have never occurred.
That's right! That's right!
We are currently spending $500 billion a year that we don't have. That's the rate the national debt is going up. They won't tell you that. They'll say the deficit this year was $187 billion, but they don't count what they borrow from the Social Security and other trust funds, from the HIVA funds. They just, put a treasury bill and say that they owe it. But our national debt, the obligation is going up $500 billion. The young people have an obligation in the future, next 30 years, of $60 trillion of obligation. And a lot of people in the media especially come up, why is it that the young people get enthusiastic about what you're doing? Why do they care about that? It's not too complicated. Why should young people be concerned about their freedom? Why not? Along with this notion that they have to build up fear in our hearts and minds so that we capitulate and give up our liberties. This is one of the things that they do here domestically. And when they have a problem, they have to declare a war. There's one war domestically that I think has gone wrong. It has never benefited us. It's cost now hundreds of billions of dollars over the last 30 years. We should get rid of that war, and that to me is the federal war on drugs. Endorsing the notion of freedom of choice and state rights does not mean that you endorse people's abuse. We have alcohol is legal in this country, but that does not mean that we endorse the unwise use of alcohol and drunk drive or anything else. People have to be responsible, but the decision-making power has to be put in the hands of the individuals. If there's to be regulations, it should be by the states. But this obsession on drugs has gone too far, because the compassionate conservatives are so compassionate that if state legalizes marijuana, and if you happen to be suffering from cancer or AIDS and you're using legalized marijuana by the state, the federal government comes in and overpowers the states and arrests people who are sick, and if they've been caught the third time, we'll put them to jail with mandatory lifetime sentences. It makes no sense. But we have this opportunity, and it's coming about because not only is it seen by so many in this country, and a growing number, and the young people recognize that this system isn't viable, that we have to do something, that all of a sudden, I think the witnessing that occurred just recently on a particular day, and maybe will occur again in December. The message is so powerful because although we're individuals acting alone but coming together, we are now in competition with all the power and all the money, and they'll hear from us for a long time to come. Thank you very much.